welcome to the show. I'm excited to be joined today by Barry Aumiller, founder of Bear Ventures. And he and I have gotten to know each other in recent months offline, and we've both worked in the logistics slash transportation industry for quite a few years. And, I wanted to have him on the show. We're going to be talking about freight. We're going to be talking a little bit about fishing as well. I learned that we both have a passion for fishing, him more successful than me. But we'll talk about that a little bit. How are you doing today, Barry?
Oh, awesome. Happy Friday. Pleasure to be on the show. I really appreciate it. And God's good. I had the 2-year-old checkup this morning and now this to break up a little bit from RFP land. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you were on the road some this week as well, right? Busy week.
Oh yeah. Yeah. About 7 days out. So happy to be back home.
Absolutely. Yep. God is good all the time, no doubt. Just to kick things off, I want to go way back, right? Kind of back to the beginning. So, who were you
Yeah.
surrounded with, and what kind of inspired you to go into this world of trucking slash logistics?
Yeah, it is a wild world, Andy. Actually, one of my high school friends, I kind of knew him. We ended up at Missouri State, and I was kind of on that fence about I'm doing business management. What else do I do? And he said, take a logistics class. His dad was on the board at Union Pacific, and now he's at Union Pacific doing big things. But so I took an elective at Missouri State, got into Dr. Kent's program, and I loved the realism, like all the different modes. And then we were talking about transport topics, frequently. So it was like a lot more appealing than the book studies, so to speak. And, with that, through Dr. Kent's program, he was doing internships with Prime. He had a close relationship with them since they're headquartered in Springfield, Missouri. So Robert Lowe, Jamie Eli, Steve Woodkey, I love all those guys, learned a lot about contract freight and a lot about execution and high performance. And then it kind of went into where my dad had some health issues, and I just kind of looked back home and I got on. I was lucky to get on at Hogan, and Ben Strickler there was running the logistics or the brokerage for them. And he really inspired me about carrier sales, customer management, account management, spot freight, kind of an intro to bids. And I eventually got into sales at a pretty young age for outside sales. And then lastly, you know, uh, Tim Breckenridge, I kind of took a break during COVID and ended up in intermodal and started moving his freight intermodal. So he just kept talking to me about contract freight and assets and all this. And I'm like, it kind of fired me up again, and then he was really good at consulting. So I worked closely with him as well. So a lot of good mentors and partners.
Absolutely. Well, my story goes back to 1992. I was in college, and a guy I know and I was in the same high school and then fraternity with, he said, "Hey, we're doing this software thing, rolling out some software for some companies. We need somebody to enter driver logs. And I
Yeah.
had stacks of them. I would have to enter account number, start time, end time, setup time, yada, yada. And basically, it was helping this company know where their drivers were being detained and what their unload rates were so that they could better plan their routes, basically. And I would have never imagined, like this many years later, 30 some odd years later, I'm still in logistics and trucking stuff. I would have never guessed it at the time, but it's honestly, it's a lot of application and it's great people as well. Like I've met so many
For
awesome,
sure.
so many really just good, down to earth people across all these years. So it's been a really, really fun ride, honestly. But that's a really cool background. It takes me back to my college.
Yeah, that data entry phase,
Oh man.
data integrity.
Well, I was 10 keying for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours at a time, right?
Oh,
Oh man. I mean, like literally hundreds of driver logs at a time, right?
your fingers start to hurt.
Oh man, I would literally, I'd have to take a break. I would because, you know,
Oh,
I think one time I got a stack of driver logs, and I want to say it was probably 800 or 900 of them, right? It was months
Wow.
of data, right? Months and months.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, every couple hours, I need to get up and rest my hand a little bit, you know? It's like,
for sure.
but then after that, it got probably even worse. We digitized maps for every county in the United States. So you
Wow.
took these raster grayscale maps and you had to click on every highway to make it interstate blue, US highway red, state roads green. I did that for months and months and months and months. But what came out of that ended up being a logistics software company that then got acquired. It was Appian Logistics Software. Then they got acquired by TMW Systems, and then they got acquired by Trimble. So I was along for that ride. That was a really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so fast forward 30 years, in terms of business today, what
Mhm.
would you say are some of the key challenges that you're hearing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of two-sided, like the trucking side and the shipping side, right? I mean, that's kind of the two forces. And on the trucking side, it's, your costs, where are your benchmarks, you know, there's the driver issues, the recruiting, the retention, the insurance, you know, such a key factor, not cheap. Then you got your rental of trucks, trailers versus owning. Do you have your own shop? Do you not have a shop? Which one? Fuel. I mean, there's a lot of variables there. And then also, to go with that, market. Like what are you going for? Do you have spot? Do you have contract? Do you have dedicated? Or do you have one of those? Do you want to be all three of them? There's a lot out there right now, and it's all about where you're at and where you want to go.
Right, right. There are a lot of aspects you just covered there. Fuel and maintenance being very high, part of the cost equation in the trucking. But then not only that, how are you going to capture market? Because if you don't have enough sales, it's going to be tough sledding. So kind of market
Right.
positioning and where you want to be and what you want to do. And all of that is extremely critical. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I'm doing is, being a supplementary sales for these medium-sized carriers that want to grow up to be 1,000 trucks. And it's just kind of focusing on what they're really good at and then driving out, an ideal customer and a campaign for them to basically get the customers they need or lock in at least some contract freight that's more sustainable. Some of these carriers that I'm seeing now, it's a driver that came from overseas, started driving, they got a few trucks, they get a few drivers, they get more trailers, and then they're doing some business. Now the market's flipping. What do we do to sustain the line? Because they have to look good to their creditors. And what's going to look more appealing, a book of C.H. Robinson or a book from three or four Fortune 500 companies, that you start to do years and years of business with? And that's kind of what I saw, at Prime and Hogan, is these sustainable relationships where you can really grow organically with the customer. And I think that's where most of us want to be, is on that truck.
Right, right, absolutely. And I've been in business development a long time. It's much easier to do more and repeat business with an existing client than it is to get a new client logo. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? So if you can
Yeah,
deliver value and help them, it's much easier to get the next thing and then the next thing, right? Than it is to go out and get what would be called a new logo kind of client. So,
for
but
sure.
I've been involved in that. So in terms of success today,
Mhm.
what are a couple of key things, that people in executive leadership roles should be thinking about them, should know?
Yeah, I mean, I think your costs, but always be there to help your colleagues, whether it's personal or professional. Always have goals and incentives and partnerships. I think those just go a long way, to getting where you wanted to be, and honesty is the best policy. I think that goes a lot with the shipper side, and don't don't oversell your capabilities
Right.
unless you can scale to that, or you have those in your back pocket, and that's kind of where you fall back onto the, you know, identifying what you're really good at, or what geographically speaking, I think happens a lot of times where you have those densities, and that's sort of where I've, been able to be successful, is kind of design a asset network out with customers, but also keeping in consideration the components of your drivers, equipment, terminals, these type of things, to get that high service level to meet all the KPIs that customers, want and expect right now. Everybody's performing really well.
Right, absolutely. That expression, don't overpromise, underdeliver. I think if you follow that rule, don't overpromise and underdeliver. That's not a good place to be when you're trying to have a business. So I've always
100%.
I've always stuck to that. And the other big one for me, this is a guy that older people will know, Zig Ziglar. He's this, sales guru guy, passed away, but he said basically you'll have everything in life that you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Right. And I think that
Yeah,
is so true, right? If you help enough other people get what they want, you're going to have everything you need, basically. I think that's
it's
so true.
true
So
for sure.
I've always stuck to that as one of my kind of mantras. But you and I also, I found out we share a love of fishing. So I grew up fishing on lakes in Oklahoma, mainly, and some in Texas, bass fishing,
Nice.
catfish, crappie. Um, now you took, I just did friends and family, like you go out and fish for a while, but you actually like, you go out and do some serious, like tournament level stuff, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad and I won our first tournament when I was 13, and
Okay.
at, at Lake of the Ozarks, and I told him, Dad, let's just do this every weekend. you know, but it was like he split the money with me, and I had like 700 or 800 bucks. You know what I mean? I was like, that was big time. But yeah, so over time, just did a few tournaments in the spring, a few in the fall, and then here within the last 4 years, I was able to do some major league fishing where you jump in with another a pro, and you're kind of the co-angler, and I really enjoy that. But mostly, I've had some top tens, and it's been really really exciting. But then also, because you're kind of learning from a guide, you're kind of take it as a guide experience more or less. But
Right.
then also, I like to do the buddy bass where, I got my boat, and, one of my best friends and I, after my dad passed, he said, Hey, I want to fish that tournament with you. And 72 boat buddy bass tournament. And of course,
Mhm.
him and my other buddy, they want to go to the bike week at Lake of the Ozarks. And I'm like, guys, I just want to hang out here on the dock. Like, oh, come on, Barry. Sure enough, I'm driving. I'm like, okay, we're done at 10. Sure enough, we get done at like midnight or something. We get back, got to take off. My buddy's like, he's got diabetes. He's like, I don't know if I can do it today. I'm like, you'll be fine. I'll get you breakfast, and you'll hit that Ozark air. You'll be just fine. Sure enough, we were the last boat out of 72, second cast of the day on top water. And this bass just, I mean, just toilet bowl flush this thing. And
Really?
I look, oh yeah, and I look out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, get the net, and like he doesn't move. Like, he's kind of still recovering, and then I start kind of letting him have it, like, verbally, like, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah,
And he got the net in there. It was like a 3 pounder to start the day. And
that's
long story
good.
short, it was just our day. My dad and my brother, I think, were watching over me, and we had 7 keepers. You only weigh in, it's your 5 15 inch, and it's the cumulative weight. And then they do a big bass as well. So we got big bass and the 16 plus pounds, our five best, had a 5 pounder, one over 5 pounds that day. And
Oh, that's
you
great.
know, it was nice. We came home with some some money in the bank. So
Yeah.
that always helps.
And you actually have a picture of a good bass, I think, on your profile right now, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I fished that big bass bash with my
Yeah.
cousin. He does commercial real estate, and they bought him and his wife got a place there, so that's where I keep my boat. And him and I go out there. That's our one tournament. It's a little more laid back. It's like only one counts, but yeah, that was about a 3.5 pound bass, and we had a good time. It's nice to get out there and anytime you can on the water and just kind of relax. And then it always allows me to kind of it gets those creative minds. It's like golf. Like, I love to golf too as well. And then you come back and you're kind of refreshed and ready to get back at the business world.
Absolutely. Well, you were talking about your dad, and I went out with my son early in the spring. It was cold because in Oklahoma we have a lot of wind, right? So it's like
Yes.
58 or 60, I think, at the first of the day. But when it's blowing
Mhm.
30 miles an hour, it's like, oh man. So we had our jackets on and everything. Anyways, we were fishing for about an hour, and then he caught a 6 pound bass that day.
Wow.
And man,
Awesome.
those are fun. I was
That
so
gets the blood going.
I was so happy for him, because many
Yeah.
years ago in college again, I had a good friend. This friend of mine won a bass boat in a tournament, right? He won a bass boat. So
Awesome.
he took me out one day on this pond and showed me the best lures and gave me his inner tube. Went out there and I
Nice.
caught a 6 pounder that day. And
Heck yeah. There you go.
man, it's so much fun, like catching a bass like that. I don't know what it is about it. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities in business as well, frankly. That feeling of you've landed something, right? It
Yeah, it is an accomplishment.
is.
And
It is.
the big fish are always the hardest one to get
Oh
into the
man,
boat, right?
they
Just
are
like business,
absolutely.
typically they don't just you got to really be strategic and have a value add, right? So,
Absolutely, you do, no doubt. And having an expert guide along with us that day helped a ton because
mhm.
he said just fish right along this ledge right here. You can't see it above the water, but there's a drop off right there, and they love to hang out right there. And we're like, oh, that's really good to know. He said, but don't get too far to the right, or you get tagged up. You'll get snagged in all the brush and everything.
Oh,
Just be over
yeah.
here, and boom. Oh man, but having a guide, I think
Call,
helps a ton.
for sure. For sure. And that's one thing I've always loved to do is take my buddies that are inexperienced. It's like, hey, just you got to get up in the morning and you can use my stuff. I like putting people on fish. It's a blast. And
Oh, it
kids
is.
too. Kids too. Awesome.
Absolutely. No doubt. Well, this is one question I ask all my guests. So,
Yeah.
just high level, what would you say as a final word of advice for our friends out there listening or watching today?
Never give up is probably the biggest one. I mean, if I just laid down every time I got punched, I
Yeah,
wouldn't be where I'm at today. And the biggest thing for me though is get it in writing as you get higher up in your partnerships, because that verbal agreement, it doesn't mean anything nowadays. And you're going to interpret things differently
yeah,
as you go along. And you might not be growing together, you might be growing apart.
right.
So that would be my one big thing. Get everything in writing. That way everybody's on the same page going forward.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. I've been in some big contract negotiations, multi-million-dollar deals, and if it's not in writing, it's not a part of the deal.
It's true.
Right?
Sad but true. Sad but true.
Sad but true. The he said, she said that. I thought he said that. That's what I said. None of that really matters. If it's not in the agreement, it's not a part of the deal. So, anyways, well, Barry, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you, and I, of course, wish you all the best with your business. What's the best ways for people to connect with you?
Yeah, typically email Barry at consultbv.com. My cell 314-402-5233. Text me, or my website consultbv.com. I'm on LinkedIn. All the typical avenues us logistics people are used to.
Absolutely. LinkedIn has become a bigger and bigger part of my life in the last 5 years. But yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and insights with the audience.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Take care.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Barry.